drugs is only fun in the beginning, bro. I can tell you that now. Like, it gets to a point where it's not fun, dude.
Even while you're on.
Even when you're on, bro. When you're sitting in your fucking room 5 days later on your own and you're still sniffing lines and you're too scared to leave the house because you think people are after you, it's not fun, bro. Or when you walk into a shopping center and you think the security that's talking to themselves or each other are talking about you, it's not fun.
This podcast is sponsored by Nutricon. You can use the code Movember and save 20% off on all orders. This episode is also sponsored by St. Anger Clothing. You can use the code Iconic20 and save 20% off on all online orders. Shout out St. Anger. What's happening, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Jester Radio. I got Dom Van Pannier. How do you want to pronounce that? How do you pronounce
Von
it?
Pannier.
Okay, Von Pannier.
Von Pannier.
And are you French and German, or what's your parents or grandparents?
So my dad is half French, half German, and then my mom is just a Durbanite, but she's from Westville.
And you were born in Durban?
I was born in Joburg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any time lived in Durban?
No, not at all. Like my grandparents lived there, but we've lived in Joburg our whole life. We grew up here. My dad used to live in the UK, like obviously before I was born and stuff. But he's also lived here.
So you've just Joburg, born and bred.
Always in, always out.
So, bro, fellow fitness fiend as I am, you have done essentially everything I've done, from bodybuilding to running to cycling. Obviously, you've got more experience with, the endurance side of things, and obviously that's what we're going to talk about today. We're also going to talk about, your addiction and, beating addiction and, finding outlets to help you recover and, your recovery journey. So you maybe want to start just, let's start with the addiction, because I assume that obviously came first.
Yeah. So I went to like an awesome school. I played sports all my life. I was really good at sports in primary school, and then I went to a really good high school. I went to Cares and played sports in school, and then I just I'm the youngest of, there's I think I've got 4 older brothers, and then like they're 40s and 30s now, so I mean there was quite a big gap. So when I was really small, I was picking up on what they were doing in their teenage years, and like my older brothers were going to Truth like when it opened, and you hear the stories and stuff from when my brother was in boarding school, and the guys are smoking and drinking and whatever. So I suppose I picked up on those habits pretty early in my life. And in high school, I mean, I was big on my sports, but I was always like just that naughty kid, that I was always in trouble and giving the teacher shit and carrying on as usual, like just being a real boy. And then I got into like the soft drugs. I was really drinking and smoking cigarettes and going to the cricket. That was like the main thing.
In high school, what age about?
From 14. I started pretty young, from 14, and I was actually there boarding. But after like my second year there, grade 9, Form 2, I had to leave the hostel and I got put into day boy. That's what they call it. So you
had to leave because of the drinking and stuff?
Well, it was like smoking weed in school and getting into fights and just warnings from hostel. And then it was basically on the condition that if I played sports, I could stay, And I remember still going for interviews at other schools like Abbott's College and all the rest, and I was like, this is not going to work for me, but there's no sports and stuff there. And I just kind of carried on with it, and then I started going to clubs very young, and then I started making like fake IDs for my friends and making bucks with that. And my mom used to make like muffins, and I used to sell muffins at school, and then I'd go into Yeovil and buy like weed, and then I started doing like harder drugs at the clubs, taking pills and like sniffing lines and taking Khat and whatever when I was probably like 16 years old, 16. Between 15 and 16. And I got into like a little bit of the older crowds. The guys were only a couple of years older than me, but at that time they seemed much older. And you start going to the same clubs every single week. From like a Thursday to Sunday, you on the jaw, and you get to know kind of like the bouncers, and you get to know like, the big dealers in the clubs and stuff. So drugs become very easy to get your hands on, and they become a lot cheaper than what everyone else is paying for them. And you end up selling them and buying more drugs with the money you're making from that. And, that's like kind of like how the cycle really started for me. And I was making money selling the muffins, buying drugs to sell the drugs to make more money, and then making the fake IDs, and it just happened very quickly. And I carried on playing sports as much as I could. That was kind of like my mask to this, this drug addiction that was starting. And it becomes so you become so oblivious that, I was young and like I was just having like a jaw all the time, but I wouldn't sleep from like 2 to 6 days on end. You know what I mean? You just carry on partying, and the worse you felt, the more high you wanted to get. So you just carry on. And I finished matric. I had like a rough high school in terms of like just the way that I behaved, and my parents obviously took a lot of strain from me, and so did my brother. So I've got a twin brother. Okay. And he stayed back when we were in primary school, so it was a little bit difficult for him in high school, and also we didn't vibe much because we were in different years, and it's with me taking the drugs all the time, like our relationship just kind of simmered into nothing, and I went through a lot of relationships, like with chicks, you in and out of relationships, and it's drugs and sex.
They're in
and
like the club scene. And
yeah, big time. I mean, you use together all the time. It becomes a comfort thing for you. Use drugs together, and it's basically that. It's drugs, sex, and it's like not sleeping and partying, and everything.
What did you learn from those relationships with those girls? Compared to relationships now, like healthier, non-drug oriented relationships.
So definitely like a lot of codependency and like insecurities that would stem from childhood. I see that a lot. And I only really noticed that when I'd gone through all my years of rehabilitation and done that work on myself. I see it in everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people these days, that I meet that haven't gone through that. Anyone can rehabilitate themselves. You don't have to have a drug addiction to go through a rehab process. It's rehabilitating the habits that are not working for you in a constructive manner.
I mean, everybody has them.
100%.
Some show themselves obviously like drugs.
Yeah.
Others don't, where it's just addicted to social media.
Exactly. There's always the art, but drugs is so frowned upon because it's drugs. But that's a perception that everyone's created for society. There's no perception on alcohol that there is on drugs, but alcohol is just as bad. Like I've seen guys withdrawing in rehab that look like they've just come off heroin, but they're there for alcoholism, And so a big learning thing for me was just identifying and noticing people's insecurities, and you can't save people with chemicals, and if somebody wants to be helped, they have to do it on their own accord. I went through the exact same thing, A lot of people didn't agree with what I was doing, and I used to fight a lot with, especially like my parents and my friends at the time as well, were like, fuck dude, like what's going on, they didn't vibe with me much anymore unless they were using with me, But my good friends from like primary school, high school, like my like close mates. And then dude, after school I had like a rough matric vac. Ended up, instead of being there for a week, I stayed for 2 weeks and ended up selling drugs for the dealers in Durban. And long story short, after matric vac, I ended up in my first rehab in April 2011. So I matriculated in 2010 and ended up in my first rehab. I eventually, like after a 6-day bender, it was over the Easter rugby weekend. And that's
so it was your first year out of school?
Yeah, first year out of school, bro. And I just carried on. Like obviously once I finished matric, it was like, just go, bro, And I went into my first rehab. I bent it for like 6 days. So I just said to my parents, I was like, listen, guys, like I can't anymore. I actually spoke to one of my friends, and she was like, listen, you need to speak to your parents, otherwise I'm gonna.
So it was also a personal decision as well as obviously your friend?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. It was almost like I needed somebody to just say like, okay, dude, if you don't, I'm going to. I wouldn't have done it on my own, And sat my parents down, told them like, listen, this is a story. I got a drug problem. I need help. And it was hard for my mom.
They were obviously aware of the usage, but maybe not to the extent that it was happening. So
when I was growing up, my dad was an alcoholic. He was in rehab when I was about 10. So I've also seen it from that side. I still remember going and visiting him in rehab and, the whole process of him getting sober and whatever. So actually what happened was he started drinking like a little bit later on when I was still in my teens. And my drug use became okay because he was drinking. So it was like if you're gonna drink, I'm gonna drug. You know.
So you were almost justifying your usage because of him.
Yeah. It became easy for me. You know, I was like, you can't tell me not to use drugs. I mean, if I drank, you couldn't tell me that I'm not allowed to drink if you drinking. You know. So yeah, it was hard for my mom. She actually said to me, like, she thought she was going crazy, bro, because she would see me and I'd be okay, like maybe for a day or two, and then like I wasn't knackered for the next few days. So she couldn't really figure out what was going on. And you know, as a mom, I'm sure she denied that to herself, what was actually going on. I mean, I've got older brothers that have been through not drug addiction, but I mean, I'm sure she's seen it. But moms aren't stupid. They know exactly.
They're also moms in general, like ignorance is bliss, and they would pretend to not think certain things are happening because they don't want to actually face the fact that these things are going on.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like my mom and I had a pretty good relationship, you know, and it's so I went into my first rehab. It was a 21-day program, and they put me on quite a lot of medication, like antidepressants and mood stabilizers and sleeping tablets, because they diagnose you with a lot of stuff. But I mean, you go in drug induced, you know, you've been bending it for however long, and now they tell you're bipolar and depressed, and obviously your chemicals are out of whack because you've been sniffing lines and carrying on, you know. But for me, it was all new. I didn't know anything. I was like, cool, I'll take the meds. I'm depressed. I'm this. And spent 21 days in the rehab and came out and didn't stay clean for very long. Started bending it again, and it just carried on. Then it became bad relationships, and everything just started again, bro. And it just actually got worse because now I'd been to rehab, and it was like I kind of knew what it was about, and I was, you know, I was ready to go again. It was like 3 weeks being clean, and then I started bending it, but now I also had meds to use, so I could I was addicted to stimulants, so I was using crystal meth and Khat, and I wasn't really into the downers. But now I had sleeping tablets to take and mood stabilizers to keep me chilled when I'm coming down, you know, and all the rest of it. And after a couple of months bending it, I ended up in my second rehab. And that one that I ended up in, I really wasn't doing well. Like health-wise, when I went in, like the people there didn't even know if I was gonna make it. Like I was like purple, basically like just see through like a walking ghost, bro. From just taking so many stimulants, or you know, the Khat and using crystal meth. I'd sometimes use coke, but it was like just a boring drug for me. It was just like too chilled. And then now the prescription meds, you know, it's obviously not going to mix well being on uppers and downers. And anyways, I stayed in this rehab, and then I started using steroids in the rehab and training.
This rehab now, your first one was 21 days. How long
so
is this one?
This one, primary, is like a month, and then you can go into secondary and then tertiary care, whereas the first one is just like it's basically a clinic. It's not something I'd ever do again, like go there, you know. I think it was completely useless. But in its way, it served its time now. Once I'd gone through all the different rehabs, I can look back and learn from it, you know. And if I meet another addict or somebody that comes to me and says, listen, my son's this is, where can I send them? Do you know what I mean? That's where it's benefited me. Or I can tell them my experience and be like, don't go to that place. So the second rehab, I was in for a month, and then I started like training again and whatever. I was still big into my training somehow, but I'd like still draw, you know, it's like on and off kind of vibe. And then when I finished primary care, I was like doing really well. The counselors were like really happy with my progress, but I was also very good at manipulating, and like I knew the system now, and I was good at looking good. Do you know what I mean? It was easy for me to get away with stuff, and I went into secondary, and now in secondary you're allowed to go out a bit and for a couple of hours, and I was busy studying my diploma in exercise science then, so I started going out. I'd go to college, and then I started using again, and I'd go to college like sniffing and getting wired up, and I'd sit there for the day, and then I'd leave, and then I'd carry on using, and then I'd pretend I was going to NA meetings. Obviously I had to conform to the NA program because it was part of the first place that I went into, and I started using the meetings as an easy way out, you know, because I knew I had an hour or more to be able to go and pick up to use and still get back. And and then I got bussed. I got tested in that rehab because they do obviously random testing, and I got tested. the first time I got tested, I got away with it, and I was like, okay, cool, I can do this, you know.
How did you get away with it? They just didn't pick it up.
It just tested me at the wrong time, but the right time for me, you know, a couple of days later.
So
but I'd like
came
flash
off
my system,
negative.
take chocolate tablets. And the second time they tested me, my brother had seen me and he phoned them and said, listen, my brother's on his way home. You guys need to test him. Because he could see if I had one line, bro, that he could pick it up like quickly. And
Twin brother, older brother.
My twin brother, yeah, no, he can check everything, bro. And then, I got suspended for like 2 weeks because they remove you from the rehab so you don't become toxic for everyone else.
So how does that work in terms of, because they don't want to just be like, okay, well, get out, or do they? Or how does that work? 'Cause
Pretty
they don't
much.
want to just,
So they either phone your parents or your sponsor. So whoever's looking after you, basically, or responsible for you. So I went out for 2 weeks. I stayed clean. I came back and they were like, oh, no, it was just a mistake. Like, normally they thump you, bro, but for me, they were like, no, he was doing amazing. It's just a mistake. Like, they eased off it, bro. And I was like, fuck, I manipulated these guys so well. They really think that
you're on the
this
mend.
actually seems like it's okay, bro. You know, now I'm back and they're like, this ache's going to come right. So I stayed there for another month. And then, shit, dude, I left again. And I stayed clean for a little bit, and then it just went south again. I started working as a PT. I finished my studies, and then I just started using again, like hectically. And
so now, your first rehab was you were within your year of turning 19.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
Probably like 20, maybe. Yeah.
So almost a year later.
Almost a year later. Like just started bending it like really hard. Like now I knew everything. We like the ins and outs of what's happening. I wasn't scared of chemicals at all. Like I would use like drugs. That is just if I had to think about doing that now, I'd probably be like, I'll die. Do you know what I mean? I actually can't believe how much I used to use. It's stupid. And I started like hitting it hard again, and then hadn't slept for a few days, and I was now like manipulating my doctor. I'd go to him to get meds and tell him like, I've got the shakes and this, it's coming off the drugs, but I'd take like adrenaline blockers and sleeping tablets like crazy, bro. And then I overdosed on meds. Hadn't slept for a couple of days, and it wasn't like a suicide attempt where I'm like, okay, I'm definitely gonna die from this, but I was like, I might as well just like, this is it, bro. Let me just take and see what happens. And my parents found me in my room and they took me to a clinic, but they took me in for psychosis because obviously I was awake, but for me I wasn't. Like I didn't know what was going on. And I woke up in this center, which was the first one that I ever went to. But I was there for drug addiction. This time I was there, they call it like the general ward because you can be there for depression or anxiety or whatever it may be, burnout. So they booked me in for psychosis, and I like told the nurse what had happened, and then they realized that I had overdosed. So they still kept me in the general ward. They put me under suicide watch. They call it the fishbowl. So it's like a room with a big window, so they can see into a room the whole time. And I kind of came around, and I was like, "Fuck this, but I don't want to be here." But I still had my phone. I had money because you're allowed to in that ward, in that division, in the general ward. And I made a call to one of my friends, and I organized drugs, and I started using it in the rehab that day. And just came out from the overdose, and I'm getting wired up in this rehab. And that night, I ran away from the rehab. It was like around midnight, and I was flipping in tracksuit pants and stokies and a hoodie, and missioning the streets of like Olivedale, and I just carried on using through the night, and then it got to the morning, and I walked to Olivedale Hospital because I needed to like charge my phone. I wanted to make some phone calls. I had drugs on me, and I was on my own, and I went and tried to charge my phone at the hospital, but everyone was like looking at me like weird. But you think you still look okay, bro? And
what were you on at the time?
So now I was on crystal meth and Khat, and obviously whatever meds they had given me. I couldn't remember really the time in the rehab, except for when I ran away. And yeah, dude, couldn't find a charger at the hospital. No one wanted to help me there. So I just left and sat under the Jacaranda Bridge. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yeah.
It's in like Bryanston. And just chilled there, and it was quite embarrassing. Like I felt very insecure sitting there, but I was so high. People were like walking their dogs in the morning and like going for runs and looking up at me, like sitting under this bridge, and it was such a crazy feeling, bro. But at the same time, I was like okay being there, you know. And I started looking for. I stole a phone from one of my friends. It was actually my ex at the time. I stole the phone, and it was an old iPhone, and I needed to put a fucking one of those sticks in to get the SIM card out, you know. And I got my SIM card out, but I put my SIM card into this other iPhone, but it was for normal SIMs. So my SIM card got stuck in this phone, bro, because it had battery, but it didn't have a SIM card. And then eventually I just like pulled this phone apart and threw it away. And then I was looking for stuff in the bushes. I was looking for some grass to smoke some drugs on, and I found a Bible. And yeah, I didn't really think anything of it. Opened it. I still remember reading the page was Ephesians 2, which was being saved by the grace of God. And I was like, okay, cool. And I carried on and got my SIM card out this phone, put it back in my phone, and I carried on missioning. And then I remember I was sitting on the corner of this one street. I think it was like Church Street by, what's it, like Yuxke Park almost, like Olivedale. And I remembered when I was a lighty, my mom used to put our batteries for our Discmans and whatever in the warmer drawer, like just to charge it for the night, you know, so we could use it until the next day. So I was like, fuck, let me put my iPhone in the sun. Let me give it a go. Maybe I can heat it up. And it literally turned on with 2% battery, bro. And I was able to make a call, and I phoned my one friend, and I was like, listen, I need you to come fetch me. And she said to me, listen, like, there's a missing persons report because you've absconded from a government institution. The police are looking for you. Your parents think you're dead, like, they can't find you. So she just said to me, like, wait for me at the Olivedale shopping center there. So she fetched me, and yeah, dude, she took me to Sunny Hill Hospital where everyone was waiting for me. They admitted me straight into the emergency ward. She thought I was going to die in her car, so they dripped me, like, straight away. And I carried on using drugs. I still had drugs in me, so I went to the toilet, used the drugs that I had on me, but did nothing because I was fucking on this drip. And yeah, they sedated me for 5 days, bro. One shot. And I wasn't allowed visitors. If I wanted to have a cigarette, the security had to take me on a wheelchair, wheel me out. And then my parents just said to me, they're like, listen, either long-term rehab or it's like you for yourself, you must sort your shit out, that's it, we're gonna write you off, you know. And I was like, I'll go to a rehab, bro. I've done this before, this is my vibe. I'm gonna go for like whatever, a couple of weeks, figure out the system, you know, carry on like I've just been doing. And they said no, it's minimum 6 months. I was like, okay, cool, I'll go. And stayed in the hospital for a week, and then I came out, and then I was like, okay, let me have a farewell party on the Friday. And then I used on the Friday. I was going in on the Saturday, and then I got to this rehab, and it's called Healing Wings, and it's in Nelspruit. It's actually in the Sudwana Mountains. It's like 20 km from the nearest tar road. It's in the forest, but it's the most beautiful place ever. And I got there in my like white, like sleeve on like loafers or whatever they're called.
Guys,
white.
I apologize for these oaks that are busy building houses next door here. I hope it's not too bad. I hope it's bearable.
And white shorts. I had this like white Portugal jacket on from like the World Cup. I was like styling into this rehab, and I got there, bro, and it was on this fucking farm, and it had been raining, and it was just like shit sand, like that red clay everywhere.
You're
and
in
I
white pants.
walked in there, and I was like, I'm like a real Khaymanay. And I get into the office, and they like start searching my bags, and they pull me into the one office, and they like search my clothes like hectic, bro. Like they search the seams of your pants, your shirts. You take everything off, bro. Literally stand there in your jocks, drop, squat, and cough, and say cheers to your parents, bro. That's it. And
That's 6 months.
6 months, bro. No phones, nothing, bro. So it runs on a very tight system there. Everything's monitored. You get 1 10-minute phone call with your family a week. If they don't phone, they don't phone. Tough shit. They give you your smokes on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. And and it's a faith-based rehab. They have church on a Wednesday and a Sunday. It's not like a forced Christian thing, but it is their program. And after the first week, I ended up in hospital with seizures. So
Withdrawal or what?
So I think it was because I used that day before I went back in, because I detoxed for a week in the hospital, and then I like paneled it. So I started having seizures. They took me into the hospital, and then when I got back, I was like, okay, dude, stop fucking around. Like, just conform to the system. Like, let's get it done, you know. And the males and females are completely separated there. You don't see them. You don't talk to them. You're not allowed to. Bro. And this rehab like completely changed my life, bro. I actually ended up staying even longer voluntarily. And I found God there in like a spiritual like way of life that I had never had before. And stories that people had told me of their spiritual life and their experiences started happening to me. And it was like, okay, not that I never believed in it, but it was just never something. It was blasé for me, you know. I was like, cool, this guy believes in God, or he's had this. But these things, like I said, started happening to me, and I was like, okay, fuck, this is real. This is life, and this is what's happening. It's changing for me, and I can see it happening. And I only saw my family, I think, after 4 months. I was allowed to see them for 2 days. They came and visited me, and then again after 6 months, it was now coming up to my 21st birthday, and they said to me, okay, we'll let you out for 2 weeks. And then I said, okay, they'll only let me out if I would come back for another 3 months, because once you've done your first 6, everything happens in threes after that. And they were like, you need to stay. And I was like, okay, cool, happy to stay. So they let me out for 2 weeks for my 21st. I stayed clean. I wasn't interested in drugs or drinking. My mates were so supportive. I still had a 21st birthday, obviously, because of my twin brother. And it was cool, but everyone was fine. And I went back, did another 3 months, ended up working as a monitor in the rehab. And they started giving me a lot of responsibilities and stuff on the farm. It's a massive farm, basically, and they believe in physical labor. And they let me take up like the exercise program. So in the beginning, they stripped me of all of that. I wasn't allowed to take off my shirt. I wasn't allowed to train, no push-ups, pull-ups, nothing. Like, I wasn't allowed to exercise. Because obviously being a personal trainer, then it was something that became an image for me. So they stripped me of pretty much everything. So I did 9 months, came off all my medication and stuff. And then I came out and I started working, and I kept on having these weird interactions with people, like random people. They would come up to me like in the lift and say like, you're not supposed to be here, or you've got a calling somewhere else. And it happened to me a few times. And I kept also dreaming of Healing Wings, that I need to go back. And it wasn't to go back for a relapse. It was to go back and be there. And I decided I spoke to my parents and I was like, listen, I need to go back to Healing Wings. And they were like, are you okay? Why do you want to go back to this rehab? You spent 9 months here. And I went back and worked as a volunteer. And I worked at they've also got a boarding school for kids. So from the age of like, I think 13, or when I was there, it was like 13 to matric. And it's the youth center. And then there's the adult center. I was always the youngest at the adult center. I went in when I was 19. So the guys are pretty young. And then there was a couple of guys my age, but that was pretty much the youngest. Otherwise, you're in the youth center. And yeah, dude, I volunteered for 3 months. And that I think was the biggest change in my life in that time of getting clean, was giving back to people that saved my life. Because I had many times where I should have died, and I gave up a lot of times as well. And if I look at the things that I was doing and involved in, you know, there's a lot of other chances of death other than overdose, you know. And I go back and I see how I was protected that whole time, and how God was in my life and how He was directing me. And, you know, we have to go through these things to get to where we are now, you know. And now my life is the complete opposite. Whereas before, when I came out of these other treatment centers, I still had this thing of drugs or alcohol attached to me. Whereas now I'm like, it's so far from me. I can't even imagine doing it. And when I meet people that are still drugging, and, you know, my friends that used to give me shit for it, that are stuck doing it now, I look at them and I'm like, bro, I can't help you, but this is what you need to go through. Then that's it, you know. And it's just been like this amazing. It's almost like I've lived two lives. Like now I'm in my second life. That's how I see it, you know. And I think everyone is capable of doing that and having that massive transition. But you need to allow yourself to go through it, and there's no time on it. It's life's time and it's God's time. It's never my own time, you know. I can't manage that. I don't know how long I'm going to live for, you know. And you know, I started sharing my story a lot when I came out for like 94.7 Drug Watch and doing like shares at churches and groups. But I stopped doing like NA and all of that stuff because it was very toxic for me back in the program. Going to meetings, meeting chicks there, or using drugs and going to meetings. So I left that completely, and I just started going to church. And you know, I wasn't like this heavy religious person, but I found a very spiritual way to life. You know, I don't know the Bible off by heart or scriptures, but I can tell you how God works and what He's done in my life, you know. And yeah, it's when I see people now that want to give up on stuff, but it's, for me, it's mental toughness is like a big thing. Because of what I've been through. You know, I know what it's like to be weak and vulnerable and to have nothing and to be non-athletic, you know, even though I've got a sporting background, but I was never like I am now. But it's that degree of mental toughness and training that I've been through and rehabilitation to know that it's limitless for me, you know, it's endless. I can, you know, when I'm super fit, I can, and you tell me to go and do something, I'm going to do it. I don't know that I can do it, and I can't promise you that I'll finish it, but I'm going to do it. Do you know what I mean? I don't have that limitation. Whereas before, it was just weakness. It was like, oh yeah, I can't do this, or it's too heavy, or it's too long, or it's too far, or it's too hard. Do you know what I mean? And that's a perception that was obviously built up for myself from when I was small. You know, I believe that life is, a lot of it is based on perception. Because if we talk about running, we can both relate to running, or even mountain biking, whatever, bodybuilding. You know, in the beginning, before you've done it, you think you can't do it, or you're like, how am I going to get through this? But when you've done it once, your perception of self and that changes. Do you know what I mean? And you know that you can do it. So you look for something harder. But when does that end? It doesn't, unless you choose it to end. The mountaintop it's endless. Do you know what I mean? You can keep going up and down that mountain.
There's always a new mountaintop.
Always, bro. And that's what I believe in. People should never stop and get comfortable, because comfortability or a comfort zone is a dangerous place to be in, because you'll never progress from that. Do you know what I mean?
And now you know, having this mindset where, you know, essentially being limitless, or your capabilities are limitless,
yeah.
You know, and what you can put your mind to is limitless. This limitless perception, has that come because you beat something that was so difficult to beat, and you overcome a drug addiction that is so tough, you know, to get your mind around, completely discarding? And is that why, you know, all these fitness feats just seem that much easier?
Yeah, look, I do to an extent. I mean, these fitness things were never easy for me. Like, I also started from the bottom, you know. I'm sure you have the same experience. Like, people see you now, but they don't know how you started. Like, I was never a runner. I started running 3Ks before I ran my first ultra. Before I started cycling, I did a 50K and I bled through my eyeballs riding with those that I was riding with. You know what I mean? But knowing that I've been through that drug addiction and what I had to go through in the rehabilitation process, and going through the traumas in my childhood to repair that, to repair myself, to repair my life, to start again, why should I stop? Do you know what I mean? Like, just keep moving on. And when I got into the bodybuilding, it wasn't really something that I was like big into. Like, I don't know the names of the pros and stuff. I just did it for myself. Do you know what I mean? I didn't watch all the comps on TV or anything like that. You know, I wasn't into Arnold Schwarzenegger and Ronnie Coleman and these guys. It was just, you know, something that I did at the time. I was like, I want to compete. And I gave it my all. And my first comp, I came second at provincials. Do you know what I mean? It was just something that I wanted to do. And when I do it, I'm an extremist. I mean, it's just carried through with me. And I did bodybuilding for a few years, for like 3 years. And I went through provincials, nationals, did a couple other shows, podiumed in most of the shows. And then I was like, I need something harder. Do you know what I mean? I'd got, like, the dieting stuff becomes normal for you. And then that's when I started like cycling, and then I was cycling, and then I tried running, and I was like, where's getting shin splints? I was like, whatever. And then I got my running right. And then I started enjoying the endurance stuff. It was almost like food for my mind because of like just that length of something to go through, like my addiction and having to work through everything. It became the same thing, start from the bottom, work your way up. When you get to the top, look at a new mountain and go for it. And and then I started doing like a little bit of road running, and then I got into the trail running. And Carl Evans from Mindset Movement started coaching me. We were mates from back in the day. We used to jawl and use and carry on together. So I followed him when he got clean and sober and moved to Dubai, and then started this Mindset Movement thing. And like what he was doing was appealing to me so much because I could relate to his story. And we used to chat a bit, like when he was in Dubai, and eventually I was like, Carl, please just fucking coach me. Like, I want to know what you're doing and how you're doing it. And that's when I got into my trail running. And then like I did an ultra marathon with him, or he coached me and he took the team, and we did like a 24-hour camp. And the rule was you weren't allowed to sleep. So like we grafted for the week, normal week work. And then Thursday night you sleep, Friday work, and then we started running 5 p.m. Friday, and you end Saturday 5 p.m. And when I went through that was also a big thing for me, because I saw how my mind wanted me to give up like early on, and also because you stay awake through the night. And it was reminding me of when I was taking drugs, because I enjoy sleeping and waking up feeling fresh, bro. You learn to love that every single day, as opposed to not sleeping and feeling like shit all the time. And after the first 12 hours, like Carl even looked at me and I was like, this is what I was worried about, bro. So when you get to this time in the morning, that's when it's like ready to go, It was like a joke we had like with drugs. And that 24-hour that I did, like I was struggling with shin splints for the whole of the training. But I still managed to do 80 Ks on the run, which was really cool. I'd only run 15 kilometers in my training up to that run.
Sure.
And for me, after that, again, my perception, I always come back to perception. My perception changed, and I was like, fuck, like what do I do next? What else can I do? And then I did like some stage races, and then obviously CrossFit became a big thing for me. And I really enjoyed the CrossFit, and then because of the running, I got really fit in CrossFit, and then I needed something else, and then it just carried on, bro. Got big into the cycling, and then I was like, I might as well start swimming. And then I started the triathlons. And yeah, but it's just been an ongoing thing. There's always a time where I've got to start at the bottom. Like now I trained for half Ironman. I got COVID the week before. I only pulled out of race on race day, because I still think like you tell yourself your body's going to come right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
You want to believe that you're strong enough to beat anything.
Yeah.
Whereas there's some things, unfortunately, you just can't push through.
There is some things that you just can't, bro. And there is still some boundaries that I have, but I've also become a little bit softer, knowing that life has life terms. Before that I was like, everything that you don't do is weakness. I was like, everything had to be hard, but it's been cool, bro. It's been so awesome to like just watch my life as a movie, every day, and going from having nothing to starting my personal training, and then opening my own gym, and working with people with weak mindsets, and not just training them but training their minds. And I've got a lot of clients that came from nothing to doing everything now. They might not be doing it on the scale that I'm doing it on, but they used to do nothing, and now they weight training, they're doing CrossFit, they're mountain biking, they're trail running. Like they go out and they'll do stuff that they'll never do before. And that's what I enjoy, bro. I enjoy working with people that are weak-minded. But I'm not going to be soft on them and say, stroke their back and be like, oh, it's going to be okay. I also believe in tough love, because people.
It's tough getting that balance.
Yeah, it's hard, bro. It's really hard, because not everyone's for it. But if you get that small percentage, it moves on, it rolls on. Word of mouth is obviously, the best form. And I believe everyone has that capacity to make that shift. We're all the same. People think we're all different. I think we are all the same. We might have different situations and scenarios in our lives, but I think we all can tap into that little bit of mentality where you can make these massive changes. But it's scary, bro. It's not easy. It's not easy at all, because sometimes we have to make the decisions that we don't really want to or are really difficult. But once you make that decision or that change, things just kind of flow afterwards. Yeah, bro, that's pretty much it.
In terms of, all this endurance and stuff, do you think you go so deep in it? And I definitely know I do, and everything I do, because I've also got an addictive personality, I get completely obsessed with everything that I do, and everything I do in my life has to be done to the best of my capabilities. Not because I want to be the best, but just because if I'm doing something, it needs to be done, right.
Yeah.
Not to be better than anyone else, but just because whatever I put my mind on, I try to do the best because of my addictive personality. The same way with bodybuilding, when I did that, I was completely obsessed with bodybuilding. When things obviously that I enjoy, because I've did studying. I was never obsessed with studying, but now with running, I'm completely obsessed with running. And now it's a week before UTCT, and I'm not really depressed, but I'm like, oh, Saturday I've only got an hour run. That's going to be so short. That's so boring. I almost don't want the event to come so that my training can stay
up.
Yeah, and do you think your obsession with fitness and everything now is because of your addictive personality, or do you think there's maybe other reasons why you love it so much?
So I think it's definitely that addictive personality, and but that's okay. The other thing that I just love, bro, is just feeling good. Like, I know what it's like to feel super shit. I weighed 57 kilos when I went into my first rehab, bro. 57 kilos. I was completely wasted. And, so people see me now and they're like, this guy's big, he's muscular, he's fit, he's healthy. But that wasn't the case all the time. I had to work to get to where I am now. And every single day, like you say, you become obsessed with it. I was super obsessed with my bodybuilding to the point like, no one agrees with what you're doing, or there's a lot of people that don't.
Majority always won't.
And it's okay, because they don't need to understand what you're doing and what your journey is, because they've got their own. And just like you, like I got obsessed with whatever I was doing, and I would never miss a training session, even if I was broken, and I still do the same thing now. But I think it's okay to be obsessed with this. People will be like, oh, but it's just another addiction. So what, bro? Do you know what I mean?
You're not harming anyone else. You're not harming yourself. You happy. With drugs, there was times you're obviously happy maybe when you're on it, but then there's complete depression when you're off it. Whereas fitness, you're not going to be completely depressed on a rest day. Yes, you might be bummed or sad, but it's not going to be so detrimental to you the same way coming off drugs is going to.
Yeah, bro. And drugs is only fun in the beginning, bro. I can tell you that now. Like, it gets to a point where it's not fun, dude.
Even while you're on.
Even when you're on. When you're sitting in your fucking room 5 days later on your own and you're still sniffing lines and you're too scared to leave the house because you think people are after you, it's not fun, bro. Or when you walk into a shopping center and you think the security that's talking to themselves or each other are talking about you, it's not fun. Do you know what I mean? You get very lonely no matter how popular you are and how many friends you think you have. It's not fun, bro. And the thing with sports and like the endurance and whatever, I've done a lot of races where I've gone with mates to do it, but I end up on my own, and I enjoy that. I enjoy spending a couple of hours on my own in that dark place where I've got to have that chat with myself. Like, it's cool to do that, bro. I like doing the endurance races where, sometimes I have to have a bit of a cry and check myself and be like, listen, bro, if I can pull yourself together, it's not the end, and then it's go time. That's when it's time to start. Do you know what I mean? So you still have, I still have those moments, even with endurance, where I feel like I'm broken, but it's a healthy broken. It's a way that I can actually deal with emotion if I need to.
You get to that breaking point, and then you realize, actually, no, this isn't my actual breaking point. I can go past that.
Yeah, 100%, bro. I mean, there's limits that I've pushed my body to, like, And like I said, it's never ending. You can carry on. Do you know what I mean? And I enjoy waking up every day, feeling good. There is times where you wake up and you're tired and you're bombed, but it's nowhere close to what I used to feel like when I was just like on the drugs, And still, like, I think from my rehabilitation and spending some time in boarding school and then doing the bodybuilding, everything's based on discipline and routine and structure. my life is still like that. And sometimes it can probably be a little bit too hectic. It almost becomes like military spec. You wake up at this time. This is what you do every single morning. You prep your meals this night. You pack them. You weigh them.
But
blah,
that
blah.
routine also, doesn't it help you? Having that routine also keeps you from going and doing negative things that are going to impact you.
Yeah, look, like I'll still go out every now and then with my mates, but they know I'm only there for an hour. Not because I'm going to start taking drugs or, getting sideways, but because that's just not my place, my environments anymore. Do you know what I mean? I don't like to sit around and small talk and drink 10 beers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't tell them to come run marathons with me in the mountains or go and cycle 100 milers. Do you know what I mean? That's cool, bro. I don't expect you to come and do that with me. But it has its time and place. I'd prefer going and being on the bike for 6 hours or running for 2 hours or whatever it is, doing CrossFit or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or doing open water swim, as opposed to going out and drinking and jolting. I think it's cool to have that balance, and every now and then you go out and have a bit of fun. But sometimes when I do that, I question. I'm like, this is not my fun, not anymore.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with having different opinions.
Yeah.
If people don't think CrossFit's fun and they would rather do karate, great. It doesn't matter. I mean, whatever you enjoy. Obviously, try enjoy the things that are going to benefit you. Going out every single night on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night's not really going to benefit you at the end of the day. But if you do go out once a week, you don't get completely wasted, and you then still exercise and you've still trained 4 or 5 times a week, whatever. Then there's fun. You can have that balance. It doesn't need to be completely militant.
And I think like when I was doing the bodybuilding, that just made it easy for me because you never go out when you body. You know how it is, but prep is prep, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think doing that first for me personally was a great base thing to move into my endurance stuff, because I had that discipline from the bodybuilding to take into my whatever, mountain biking, road cycling, like doing trail running, triathlon, whatever it is. You got a program, you stick to your program. I believe in eating correctly for performance. I might not be winning all the races, but I feel good. Do you know what I mean? I don't care if another athlete eats sweets and shit their whole life and they take podium. That's cool, bro. Do you know what I mean? But I prefer to stay eating clean, not drinking, taking my supplements, sticking to that routine that I have because I know it works for me. And that's what I enjoy. That's what I find fun. Not everyone else will enjoy that.
Yeah. In closing, what if, I don't know if anyone's watching this and they do or are facing a drug problem or an addiction, a negative addiction of any sort. You said that one friend kind of, put you in the mindset of, okay, I need to get help. But how does someone do they maybe try push away from certain people? Like what advice would you give someone that's in that tough space?
Yes, it's so hard, bro, because you're not living in a true reality. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're having a drug problem, I've sat with some of my friends that have come to me so many times, bro, that eventually I get to a point where they phone me to say to me, listen, they want to sit and have a chat. I'm like, I'm not fucking interested, bro. This is when you need to pull yourself together. Do you know what I mean? Advice, though, if I can give any, and use it or not, but everyone has their time, bro. Do you know what I mean? That was my time to go into Healing Wings and to pull my life right. And people always say, I hit rock bottom. I don't believe in a rock bottom. Rock bottom is death, bro, and drugs will kill you. Do you know what I mean? Because every time you hit this rock bottom, when you come out of it, you're going to use more. Do you know what I mean? And people have this this drug lingo, that's in the rooms and stuff. Call it the rooms. And I don't enjoy that. Relapse, all of that kind of stuff. I think it sticks to you. I don't believe in relapse. Do you know what I mean? You're either using drugs or you're not. But your advice, bro, it's such a difficult question because I can say, okay, guys, get vulnerable, ask for help, but you can do that. But are you going to come right? Do you know what I mean?
So it needs to be more of a personal
100%,
decision.
100%, bro, personal decision. Those times that I went, like I was asking for help, but I can tell you now, when I look back, I was not ready to change, bro. I was only ready to change that last time I went.
But you needed those previous failed attempts essentially to get to that final point.
Yeah, I think it's all a process, bro. And it was that was my life journey for that time. And you know, people ask me like, do you regret your drug addiction, or how did you get into it? Was it your friends? And I was like, you should have seen what I was doing to them. Do you know what I mean? It goes both ways, but people are so quick to blame others, you know. And I don't regret any of it, bro. Like, where would I be today? That I don't know. But what could my life have been? I don't know either. Do you know what I mean? This is my life. This is my life story, and this is where I'm at now. You know, I've got a great life, bro. I've got a successful gym. I've got amazing clients. I've got good friends. A lot less than what I used to have, but I got good friends. Do you know what I mean? And I've got a mindset that sometimes I also believe that I need to relax a bit. You know, it happens, bro. You put yourself into situations that aren't necessary, because you become so mentally hard because of what you've been through. You know, and I'm sure you've experienced it a lot as well, like with prep, when you like flat out, but you still got to train, or when you're running like big distances and you're just not feeling good on the day, but you know you got to hit like a 25k. And trail running is hard, bro, but it's beautiful, so it does help a lot.
Suffering in a beautiful place is a bit easier.
Yeah, it's way better, bro. So yeah, it's just personal, bro. I don't think there's anything you can put onto it, to be honest.
I think, obviously, I've never suffered from a drug addiction, but, you know, there's been times in my life where, you know, maybe I would be in a relationship that I shouldn't be in, or I would be making certain decisions. Silly example, I don't know, watching too much TV or whatever. And, you know, no matter what, every positive decision does need to start with you, and it does need to start at a point where you just need to look at yourself and be like, am I happy with myself? Yes, no, okay, well, what needs to be changed? Everyone can improve. Even you and I are sitting here right now, have tons we can improve on in our lives, and tons that we can, you know, make changes on that will benefit us, regardless of the amount of sacrifice we put in our lives. Like, maybe that's also something we need to change, is don't put too much sacrifice in your life, because then you suffer in other aspects of your life, and then those aspects that you're suffering then makes you a little bit more unhappy. So I think as humans, I think we always constantly trying to evolve, and you're always constantly trying to improve. And I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where you like perfectly enlightened or whatever. Like, no, even those philosophers, or, you know, like the David Goggins of the world, they have days where they are unhappy, regardless of the regime and strict structure and whatever they have in their life. There's days where they're unhappy. There's days where they don't feel like training, where maybe they shouldn't, and then they do. You know, we go through that as well. It's a constant journey and a constant process that I think we as humans are going to go through until the day we die.
Yeah, we're always searching, bro.
Yeah.
Always searching.
And I think that's actually what makes life so beautiful, is constantly searching. Because I think if you, I don't know how you would feel, but if you feel like, okay, now I'm done searching, like, what's the point of life then? I think, you know, looking for something and making changes and improving and making new relationships, finding new people in your life is what makes life special. It's the same way when you're dieting and then you have a cheat meal, it makes that cheat meal so special. Whereas if you're always eating rubbish is just rubbish.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel good anymore.
Yeah.
Well, bro, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been cool.
I definitely know people will find value in the story.
Yeah, I hope so, bro. It's been good.
Anything else you want to add?
No, bro. It's been cool to watch you transition from the bodybuilding and stuff. Like, when I first came out of it and I got into this whole thing, like, I was waiting for some more guys, like, to kind of just see what I was doing. And
is there anyone really else other than us? I don't know.
I don't know anyone else, to be honest. Instagram's a funny thing, bro. People, you know, you can see through it on social media, and you can see the guys that are genuinely like doing it.
Yeah.
But it was cool, bro, because when I started it, I was like, oh, this like hybrid story and whatever, and then I was looking for someone to follow, and then I only found Nick Bear like after I got into this endurance hybrid stuff, if you want to call it that. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's actually normal, because people used to tell me like, no, bro, there's something wrong with you. It's obviously the drugs is like cooked you or whatever. And then like I saw you like starting to transition to it, and I was like, I couldn't actually wait, bro, for you to feel and see what is out there, because you get stuck in bodybuilding like hectic, bro. Like it's intense, you know. And it's just been cool to watch you, bro. And I hope that, you know, with UCTC, like, you're really gonna enjoy that, dude. And your heights are just gonna go. They're just gonna keep going, bro. And I think you must just carry on with it. And you know, I still weight train and stuff a bit. I don't do CrossFit very much because it was just way too hectic with the endurance. But I still do enjoy the weight training. And yeah, just keep going, bro. And you know, you've done a couple of other things, like you had your white collar boxing fight, and so it's also been cool just to watch you. But yeah, don't stop, bro. Maybe try triathlon as well.
No, I think next year. So see, it's tough for me because I think I want to do an ultra first.
Yeah.
Then I'll look at doing a triathlon. Just because I enjoy, you know, the running so much that I would rather just do an ultra. But also, I think that's also with my mindset is I enjoy running more. I want to do it. I hate swimming. So maybe because I hate swimming, that's what I should go for rather.
Yeah.
So it's that mindset where it's like, because I hate that, let me rather move to the thing I hate.
Yeah.
And try conquer that mindset and break that limit.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, essentially going and doing an ultra marathon is going to take just as much willpower. So
yeah, it's the same, bro. And swimming's hard because it's just you and your mind, bro. There's nothing to fucking look at. There's no one
to stop.
There's no one to
lie.
talk to, bro.
Yeah.
You just it's hard, bro. Like, I've been in a race where it was a tough race for me because I lost my best friend like 2 days before, and I still raced, and I was on the swim, and I was like, fuck, bro. Like, I honestly, I was like, I don't want to do this, because you're so in your head. And all I wanted to do was get on the bike. And then when I was on the bike, I was fine. When I was on the run, I was fine. But swimming, bro, if you need like something mental, it's definitely tough. But you get good at it, just like anything else. You won't be like amazing. And like, some people are great swimmers, but it is hard, bro. But again, like, you start running 3Ks, you start swimming.
Yeah, I always thought
800
I was a
meters.
terrible runner.
Yeah.
Like long distance. I knew I was fine, good at sprints. But I always thought I was like, I would never run more than 10Ks ever in my life. I think I ran total of 25Ks the entire year last year.
Yes, bro.
With every single run ever, you know. So I never thought I'd be doing it. And now I don't wish I'd started sooner, but I was just like, oh, you know.
Yeah, why didn't I?
Why didn't I?
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't, because obviously I enjoyed the bodyboarding process, but I was just like, bro, you're stupid not to, because this is incredible.
And it's interesting, bro. Like, now you see, like, whatever you put your mind to, you can do it, bro.
Yeah. With bodyboarding, you know, there's that, yes, it takes sacrifice. Yes, it takes discipline. Yes, it's difficult, but it's not nearly as difficult as running and cycling and endurance.
Yeah, bro. I don't think so either. I think if I look back on the bodybuilding now, like you said, like, prep's hard, but it's once you've done it, it's just not hard enough, bro. Do you know what I mean? You know the process, 12 weeks, maybe 16 at the most, and you're good to go. But once you're conditioned, you can do 26 weeks of prep and comp. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or in and out of show.
And I think also when you're dieting, you get to that point within a bodybuilding diet. Well, I think most people that maybe do it for a longer period of time, I start to feel good the more I was starving myself.
Yeah.
So it became kind of easy to be starving myself. Whereas every single run that I push myself, when my heart rate's like 180, it's never easy.
Yeah.
You know, when I was doing boxing, no matter how much I was enjoying it, it was still very, 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 very difficult. You know, going to the gym and doing a chest session for an hour and a half, if that, an hour, it was always not that difficult. Maybe you need a spot because the weight is heavy, but it's not that difficult compared, and I love it. And I'm not taking away anything from people that do it, because yes, it's still way more difficult than what 99% of the population are going to do, but it has its kind of, the difficulty never really increases.
Yeah.
All you need to do is maybe just take more juice or or just wait, because you just need to put muscle on top of it. But there's no real difficulty that improves or increases.
Yeah. But I think the heart rate stuff plays a big role, bro, because that's what fucking gets you.
Yeah.
I think feeling your body under that pressure is where it gets hard, because then it's like, it becomes a mental game, do you know what I mean? And the physical together, because now you're like, okay, shit, my heart rate's super high. you can feel your body wants to crash, but it's like, how far can you go?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think also if you just look at leg day, that's why leg day is maybe the most difficult because your heart rate's, it's the day your heart rate's going to be most elevated.
Yeah.
You're using more muscle, but that's why your heart rate's up. That's why leg day is the most difficult. Whereas with all the endurance sports, you know, I mean, obviously Runderberg was, before I started training for UCT, was my furthest running time duration. And that was, you know, 4 hours of my heart rate being at 160. Whereas with bodybuilding, you know, maybe you do a squat, goes up to 160, you rest for 2 minutes, goes back down to 100. Yeah. So it's not real, you know, heart rate elevation that's you know, prolonged.
Yeah, it's definitely that time. I find like when I do weight training now, I feel so lazy. Like,
I struggle getting my heart rate up when I do weights. Like I'll do legs, in an hour, burn like 300 calories, and I'll be like, I used to burn 700, 800 calories doing legs.
It's body efficiency, really. Like that's how bodies work. Do you know what I mean? And I read an article actually which made so much sense because they were talking about fitness levels and aerobic capacity and your base level. You know, so like zone 1 and 2, and the fitter you get in that zone, obviously the harder you go to work because your body becomes efficient. And it's the same with like bodybuilding. You know, your metabolic rate starts to decrease because your body becomes efficient on those calories, and obviously you need to increase your work rate. So with when we have this cardiovascular fitness, the weight training to get a heart rate up is very difficult unless you're doing giant sets or supersets or whatever it may be. But on the isolation stuff, your heart rate's not going to really go up. You know, on compound movements, like you say, especially with like leg days and stuff, yes, but it comes back down very quickly because we've got that capacity to recover. Because our heart rate is used to working, you know, we've built this gas tank, which our zone 2 and zone 1 is now this big. So we have to really pump the body to get it to a zone 3, which would be like a race zone.
Yeah. Which I found difficult now.
It's hard,
yes, it's difficult to get into zone 3. I was doing sprints. It was not yesterday morning. It was Monday, Tuesday. What was yesterday? Yeah, Tuesday morning. So Tuesday. 2 days ago, I was doing sprints, and it was 100-meter sprints, and my pace was like 3.5 minutes per k up. So it was quite fast for me because it was hill sprints. And then my heart rate was still like 150. And then I thought like, okay, cool, I'm going to get some benefit from this workout. And then it was just like maintaining. And I was just like, what?
Staying the same.
And it wasn't that difficult. And that's what's amazing is now, you know, you go run, let's say you run 10Ks, you run for an hour. When I first started, an hour was super long.
Really.
An hour was so long. And then, you know, okay, today I'm running 5 hours. You look at your watch like, it's already 45 minutes. It's already an hour. It's an amazing feeling as well, just seeing your body's ability to just go for longer.
It's adaptation, bro. And the better you do at that low heart rate stuff, the more you focus on it. People are like, I'm running so slow. But we don't care. We're like, eventually your heart rate's going to stay the same and you're going to be running at like double your pace, you know what I mean? Or like double your speed. And your heart rate's going to stay the same, and that's exactly what's happening to you. There's
a very good podcast, Nick Bear, I don't know who his guest was, where it was like, you got to run slower to run faster.
Yeah. That's
and exactly. You just got to keep on, obviously you need to implement sprint work and all of that, but I don't know what the exact number was, but I think he was saying like 80% of your runs in a week should be zone 2.
It's like an 80-20 split job, basically. Yeah.
Well, bro, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, dude. It was awesome, bro.
Sweet. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching.